My younger son had an affair with his brother's girlfriend. When he brought her home as his new partner, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But then he announced they were getting married and my family was destroyed forever. I'm 55 years old. I work in administration for a logistics company, and what happened a year and a half ago with my two sons still keeps me up at night. My wife, Michelle, and I raised Ethan and Brandon, thinking we had given them good values, that we were a close family. You know, one of those that appears in Christmas photos smiling and celebrating together. But it turns out you don't really know your children until they do something that breaks your heart in a way you never imagined possible. Ethan, my oldest son, was always the responsible kid, the one who got good grades without us having to be on top of him, the one who called every week when he left to study in another state. He's 28 now, works in finance, and since he was like 23, he was with Jessica. He met her in college, and honestly, she seemed like a good girl. I mean, we accepted her into the family. She came to Thanksgiving dinners, birthdays, all that stuff. They were together for over 4 years, and I assumed at some point they were going to announce an engagement or something. Michelle always said Jessica was perfect for Ethan, that they complemented each other well, and I agreed, although I was never one of those parents who gets too involved in their kids' relationships. Brandon, my youngest son, is 25 years old and was always different from Ethan. Not that he was a bad kid, but he was more impulsive, more carefree, let's say. He also studied in another state, not too far from where Ethan was, and the two of them saw each other from time to time, or so we thought. Michelle and I were happy that they kept in contact, because when they were kids they sometimes fought like all siblings do, but as adults, they seemed to get along better. Brandon was studying marketing and was always talking about his plans to start a business or something. He had that energy of wanting to eat up the world, you know what I mean? Things started getting weird like 2 years ago. Ethan called us one day and told us he had broken up with Jessica. He sounded devastated, honestly, and when we asked him what happened, he just said she had been unfaithful to him. He didn't want to give us many details, said he needed time to process everything, that he was trying to move forward. Michelle was devastated, because she really did care about Jessica. And I also felt bad for Ethan because you could hear in his voice that he was suffering. We told him we were there for whatever he needed, that he should come home if he wanted to spend time with us, but he said he preferred to stay where he was, focus on his work and try to get over it. The weird thing is that Brandon kind of disappeared during that time. He stopped calling as much, and when he did, the conversations were short, like he was in a hurry. Michelle commented a couple of times that she found it strange, but I thought maybe he was busy with school or his stuff. Never. And when I say never, I mean never. Did it cross my mind what was really happening? Like 2 months passed after Ethan and Jessica broke up, and one day Brandon calls us and says, "Hey, I have a new girlfriend. I'm very happy. I want you to meet her." And we said, "Sure, that's great. Bring her over whenever you want." He didn't tell us who it was, just that they were dating, and things were going really well. When Brandon arrived at our house with her one weekend, Michelle opened the door, and I was in the kitchen preparing something for dinner. I heard Michelle make a weird sound, like a gasp or something, and I went out to see what was happening. And there was Jessica, Ethan's ex, holding hands with Brandon, smiling like nothing was wrong. I swear I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Michelle froze at the door, and I didn't know what to say. Brandon came in all casual and said, "You already know Jessica, obviously, and well, now we're together." He said it like that, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, as if he hadn't just brought his brother's ex to our house. Michelle was the first to react. She asked him what the hell was going on, and Brandon got defensive immediately. He said they hadn't planned this, that it just happened, that he and Jessica had connected after she and Ethan broke up, and that they weren't doing anything wrong because Jessica was no longer with Ethan. The way he said it, with that attitude of like, I didn't do anything wrong, infuriated me. I told him how could he think of doing this, that he was Ethan's brother, and he just shrugged and said that love is love, that he couldn't control his feelings. Jessica was standing there, uncomfortable, but didn't say anything to defend herself or explain. I asked her directly if she had started dating Brandon before or after breaking up with Ethan, because the dates didn't add up for me. She stammered a bit and said that technically they had started after, but Brandon interrupted her and said that didn't matter, that they were together now, and he hoped we would support them. Michelle was crying at that point, and I told Brandon to leave, that we needed time to process this. He got angry, said we were being dramatic, grabbed Jessica, and they left. That night, I called Ethan. I had to know if he knew what was happening. When I told him that Brandon had brought Jessica home saying they were dating, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Ethan let out a bitter laugh and said, "So they finally decided to make it public." I asked him what he meant by that, and then he told me the whole truth. Jessica hadn't just been unfaithful to him with some random person, she had been unfaithful with Brandon. Ethan found out because Jessica had left her phone unlocked one day, and he saw messages between her and Brandon that left no doubt about what was happening. Explicit messages, plans to meet secretly, all of that. Ethan confronted Jessica. She admitted it and tried to justify herself, saying she had felt more connected to Brandon, that she was sorry, but she couldn't help what she felt. Ethan obviously broke up with her at that moment, but he hadn't told us it was with Brandon because I guess he had hoped that his brother would come to his senses, that he would end that madness and they could eventually fix their relationship as brothers. But instead, Brandon continued with Jessica in secret for 2 months and then decided to make it public and bring her to our house like nothing happened. I asked Ethan if he had talked to Brandon after everything came to light, and he told me yes, that they had a conversation that basically ended their relationship as brothers. Brandon had told him that he didn't have to apologize, that Jessica had chosen to be with him because obviously Brandon was a better partner for her, and that Ethan needed to get over it and move on. Ethan told him that what he had done was unforgivable, that he had betrayed not only his trust as Jessica's partner, but their bond as brothers, and that he didn't want to know anything about him again. Brandon responded with something like, "Well, it's your loss," and that was the last time they spoke. Hearing all that from Ethan destroyed me. Michelle was next to me listening on speaker and was crying non-stop. We asked Ethan why he hadn't told us before, and he said he was ashamed, that he felt humiliated, that his own brother had done that to him, and that part of him hoped Brandon would reconsider. We told him that we were on his side 100%, that what Brandon had done was inexcusable, and that we were going to have a serious conversation with him. We tried to call Brandon that same night, but he didn't answer. We sent him messages saying we needed to talk, that we had spoken with Ethan and knew the whole truth. He didn't respond until the next day, and when he did, it was just to tell us that he was already an adult, that he could make his own decisions, and that if we couldn't support him in his relationship with Jessica, then it was our problem, not his. Like 2 months passed without having contact with Brandon. Michelle was devastated. I was furious, and Ethan was trying to rebuild his life. He told us he had started dating someone new, a girl named Nicole who worked at his same company, and that she was helping him heal. We were happy for him, although you could tell he was still hurt by everything that had happened. And then, one Sunday afternoon, Brandon showed up at our house without warning. He brought Jessica with him again, and before we could say anything, he blurted out, "We have something to announce. We're getting married." Michelle and I froze. I asked him if he was serious, and he said yes, that he had proposed to Jessica a week ago, that she had said yes, and that they were planning the wedding. Jessica showed the ring, a ring that I assume Brandon bought with money. My father, his grandfather, had given him for his education. I told Brandon to sit down, that we needed to talk about this, like adults. He got defensive immediately, said he already knew what we were going to say, that we were going to try to make him feel bad, but that he was happy, and that was all that mattered. Michelle asked him directly if he didn't feel any remorse for what he had done to his brother, if he really didn't see anything wrong with what had happened. Brandon said yes, that he felt bad that Ethan was hurt, but that he couldn't give up his happiness just because his brother couldn't accept that Jessica wasn't for him. The way he said it, with that total lack of empathy, made me explode. I told him that what he had done was an unforgivable betrayal, that he had destroyed his brother, that he had destroyed our family, and that if he thought we were going to go to his wedding and celebrate that, he was completely wrong. Brandon got up and said that was exactly the reaction he expected from us, that we were closed-minded, and that if we didn't want to be part of his life, he was going to be fine without us. Jessica tried to say something. I think she was going to try to mediate or something, but Michelle told her not to even speak, that she was just as guilty as Brandon for all this. They left, and that night we called Ethan to tell him. He already knew, Brandon had sent him a message announcing the engagement, I guess to rub it in his face. Ethan sounded tired more than angry. Said he didn't expect anything different from Brandon anymore, that he had erased him from his life and was going to move forward. We told him that obviously we weren't going to attend that wedding, and he told us he appreciated our support. My father, the boy's grandfather, found out what was happening because Michelle told him when we visited him a week later. My father was always a man of very strong principles, and when he heard the whole story, he became furious. He had set up trust funds for both grandchildren, for when they graduated from college or when they got married, something like $50,000 each. It was money he had been saving for years, and the idea was that they would use it to start their adult lives in a stable way. My father called Brandon directly and told him he wanted to talk to him. Brandon went to visit him, I guess thinking he was going to receive congratulations or something for the engagement. Instead, my father told him he was revoking his trust fund, that he wasn't going to finance a wedding that was the product of such a big betrayal. Brandon tried to argue, said that money was his by right, but my father told him that the money was his and he could do whatever he wanted with it, and what he wanted was to have nothing to do with what Brandon was doing. But my father didn't stop there. He's from that generation that believes things should be said directly and without beating around the bush, so he sent a message to the entire extended family, uncles, cousins, everyone, explaining exactly what had happened. He told them that Brandon had an affair with his brother's girlfriend, that he had broken Ethan's heart, and that now he had the audacity to marry her, expecting everyone to celebrate. He told them that he personally was not going to attend the wedding and hoped the rest of the family wouldn't either. The response was immediate. Uncles and aunts started calling Michelle and me asking if it was true, and when we confirmed it was, they all said they weren't going to the wedding. Some sent messages directly to Brandon, telling him they were disappointed in him, that what he had done was wrong, and that they couldn't support that. My sister, Brandon's aunt, called him crying and told him how could he do that to his brother, that she had raised him better than that, and that she didn't want to see him until he apologized to Ethan and fixed things. Brandon and Jessica started feeling the pressure. Brandon called us furious, yelling that we had ruined his life, that we had poisoned the whole family against him, and that it was all our fault. I told him no, that it was all his fault for the decisions he had made, and that now he had to live with the consequences. He hung up, and we didn't hear from him for several weeks. During that time, Ethan told us that Jessica had started sending him messages. At first, they were just apologies, saying she regretted everything, that she had made a terrible mistake, but Ethan blocked her. Then Jessica tried to contact him through social media. By email, she even called his office once. Ethan told us he was considering getting a restraining order if Jessica didn't leave him alone. Nicole, his current girlfriend, was being very understanding about the whole situation, but you could see she was also tired of the drama. The wedding was planned for May, but in March we got the news that Jessica had canceled everything. Apparently she couldn't handle the pressure of literally no one from Brandon's family wanting to attend, of everyone seeing her as the bad guy in the story, and of Ethan having completely blocked her. Brandon tried to convince her to go ahead, to get married alone if necessary. But Jessica told him no, that she couldn't do it like that she didn't want to start a marriage with all that negativity and rejection from everyone. Brandon blamed us again. He sent us a long message saying we had ruined his chance to be happy, that we were manipulators, that we had mounted a campaign against him, and that he was never going to forgive us. Michelle tried to respond, to tell him that the consequences of his actions weren't our fault, but he blocked her. My father tried to talk to him one more time, but Brandon told him he didn't want to see him ever again, to keep his money, that he didn't need it. About 2 weeks after the wedding was canceled, we found out from a cousin that Brandon and Jessica had broken up. Apparently, Jessica couldn't take the stress and guilt of everything that had happened anymore, and told Brandon she needed space, that maybe they had been too impulsive with all this. Brandon was devastated. Ironic, considering he had devastated his own brother without thinking twice. Michelle wanted to call Brandon, see how he was, because at the end of the day he's still our son. But I told her to wait, to give him time. We had no idea how Brandon really felt, because he didn't talk to us. One day we got a message from Jessica, apologizing for everything, saying she had made the biggest mistake of her life and that she understood if we could never forgive her. Michelle didn't respond. The worst came later, When Jessica tried to reconcile with Ethan, she sent him a long message explaining that she had broken up with Brandon, that she had realized she had made a terrible mistake, that all she wanted was to be with Ethan, that he was the love of her life. Ethan sent us screenshots of the messages, and honestly, it was pathetic. Jessica was telling him that Brandon had just been a confusion, that she should, I've never done that to him, that if Ethan gave her another chance, she would spend the rest of her life making it up to him. Ethan responded with something short and direct. He told her that what she had done was unforgivable, that she had destroyed any possibility of them being together again, that he was happy with Nicole now, and to please stop contacting him. He told her he hoped she would learn from her mistakes, but that he wasn't going to be part of her redemption process. Then he blocked her everywhere, changed his phone number, and that was it. Brandon finally contacted us about 3 months after everything exploded. He sounded different, quieter, less arrogant. He said he wanted to talk, that he needed to see his family. Michelle told him he could come home, but before he arrived, we had a long conversation about how to handle this. We decided we were going to listen to him, but we weren't going to let him manipulate us or make us feel guilty for having supported Ethan. When Brandon arrived, he looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He sat in the living room, on the same couch where he had announced his engagement months before, and started talking. He said that everything had been a mistake, that Jessica had left him and he felt lost, that his family hated him, that he had no one. But at no point, and this is important, at no point did he apologize for what he had done to Ethan. He didn't say, "I'm sorry, brother, I screwed up. I was an idiot." No. He only talked about how he was the victim now, about how everyone had abandoned him. Michelle asked him directly if he regretted having the affair with Jessica while she was with Ethan. Brandon said something like, "I regret how things turned out, but I can't regret falling in love." That answer made it clear to me that Brandon still didn't understand the magnitude of what he had done. I told him that until he could admit that he had betrayed his brother in the worst possible way, we couldn't have a real relationship with him. Brandon got angry, said he knew we were going to side with Ethan, that he had always been the favorite son, that he never had a chance with us. Michelle told him that wasn't true, that we loved them both equally, but that what he had done was objectively wrong, and we hoped he could see it. Brandon said no, that he wasn't going to admit something he didn't feel just to make us happy, and that if that was the condition to be part of the family again, then he preferred to be alone. We told him that was his decision, that we were always going to be his parents and we loved him, but that we couldn't have a normal relationship with him while he continued to not accept his responsibility in all this. He told us we were hypocrites, that families should support each other unconditionally, and left slamming the door. Several months have passed since then, and Brandon hasn't contacted us again. My mother, the boy's grandmother, tried to talk to him a few weeks ago, but he told her he didn't want to know anything about the family until everyone admitted they had treated him unfairly. My mother cried when she told us that because she loves her grandchildren and it hurts her to see the family so broken. Ethan, for his part, is fine. He and Nicole moved in together a few months ago, and you can see he's happy, or at least happier than he was when all this started. He still doesn't talk to Brandon, and when we ask him if he would ever consider forgiving him, he says he doesn't know, that maybe someday if Brandon really apologizes and shows he understands what he did, but for now he has no interest in having contact with him. Michelle and I are trying to move forward, but it's not easy. We lost a son, in a way, and although we know we made the right decision in supporting Ethan, it hurts anyway. It hurts to know that Brandon preferred a relationship that started with betrayal over his family, that he couldn't see beyond his own desires to realize the damage he was causing. And it hurts to think that maybe we're never going to have that close relationship with him again, that family dinners are always going to have that emptiness, that the grandchildren he might have someday aren't going to know their Uncle Ethan. Sometimes I wonder if we did something wrong as parents, if we failed to teach Brandon about loyalty and respect. Michelle says no, that we gave them both the same tools and in the end each person makes their own decisions. I guess she's right. But you're still left with that doubt, you know? That feeling that maybe if we had done something different, if we had seen the signs earlier, this could have been avoided. Last week was Ethan's birthday, and we celebrated at our house. Nicole was there. My parents came. Some uncles and cousins, too. It was nice, but there was an underlying sadness because we all knew who was missing. No one mentioned Brandon, but his absence was palpable. Ethan seemed to be fine, blowing out the candles, and laughing with Nicole. But I know him, and I know that in some corner of his mind, it still hurts. The kind of pain that never completely goes away. You just learn to live with it. I don't know how all this is going to end. I don't know if someday Brandon is going to wake up and realize that his actions had real consequences, that you can't destroy someone, especially your own brother, and expect everything to fix itself just because time passed. I don't know if we're ever going to be a complete family again, if we're going to have those gatherings where everyone is present and things are like before. Probably not. Probably this is what we are now. A broken family trying to find a new normal without one of its pieces. And Jessica, well, I don't know what became of her. Ethan says she stopped trying to contact him, and I guess she eventually understood that bridge was completely burned. Part of me feels something like pity for her, because in the end she lost everything, Ethan, Brandon, everyone's respect. But then I remember that she made those decisions, knowing exactly what she was doing. And that pity fades pretty quickly. What hurts me most is seeing Michelle suffer. She was so close to both boys, and losing that relationship with Brandon has affected her deeply. Sometimes I find her looking at old photos of when the boys were little, when everything was simpler, when the biggest problem was who chose the Friday night movie. She cries when she thinks I don't see her, and I don't know what to tell her to make her feel better because I myself don't know how to feel better about all this. My father says we did the right thing, that you can't reward betrayal with acceptance and celebration, that values have to mean something. And I agree with him, but that doesn't make it hurt less. It doesn't make the nights easier, when you stay awake wondering where your youngest son is, if he's okay, if he's sorry, if he's ever going to come home, because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the pain he caused, he's still my son, and a part of me is always going to want things to work out somehow. But the reality is that some things don't get fixed. Some betrayals are too deep, some bridges are too burned, and all you have left is to learn to live with the scars. And that's what we're doing now. Michelle and I, Ethan, my parents, all of us. We're learning to live in this new version of our family, one that's smaller but maybe more honest, one where actions have consequences, and where family loyalty isn't just a nice phrase but something that really means something.